Jai Gurudev. So last time we read till the middle of the page 248. Yeah, everybody's up to speed, right? So let's continue further. It continues on the same angle that we've been speaking about. The mind gets caught up in notions. It creates notions. Yeah, we have notions not about people, not only about situations, not only about things, but about my own body and who am I? Yes, that who am I is the main question. That is where my own notions confuse me. Till here it is clear, right? Now we go deeper into how these notions can confuse you even more. So we'll start reading from where Vasistha, who suddenly became silent when he found that Rama was completely absorbed, from that line. Who's going to read?
Vasistha, who suddenly became silent when he found that Rama was completely absorbed in the self, resumed his discourse after an interval and after Rama had returned to normal consciousness. O Rama, you are thoroughly awakened and you have gained self-knowledge. Remain forever in this exalted state. Do not get involved in this world appearance. The ignorant man who thinks he is suffering and whose face is streaming constantly with tears is worse than a painting or a statue. For the latter is free from experience of sorrow, nor is the statue subject to illness and death. The statue is destroyed only when someone destroys it. But the human body is certainly doomed to die. Even as when a statue is broken, no life is lost. When the body, born of thoughts and notion, is dead, nothing is lost. It is like the loss of second moon when one is cured of diffluvia. The self, which is infinite consciousness, does not die, nor does it undergoes any change whatsoever.
Okay. Very nice example. Diplopia is where you can see everything double. Yeah, that is why he's talking about two moons. Yeah, so if you look at the moon, you would see two moons. But are there two moons in the sky? There's just one, right? The other one is just illusionary. It does not really exist. Right? Like that only this body, however real it may feel, however true the relationships of this body may feel, this body is nothing but a dream. And this dream will end one day. When this body drops, you will realize, oh, I still am. I do not die. Yes, I am not the body. It happens as a realization. Now I'll tell you something. That moment of realization is very brief. Yes. If you are really aware at the point of death, then only can realization happen, right? If you are not aware, can realization even happen? No. Yeah. So realization will happen only if I am completely aware. Yeah. Not unconscious at the point of death. What makes us unconscious? We've done this before.
Fear of death.
Fear of death. Yeah. The fear kills you before death really overtakes this body. Oh, I am dying. That thought itself makes you go unconscious. Yeah. And that fear completely masks you from awareness. If you are not aware, how can you realize anything? So the main thing that we are doing with any scripture is helping an individual drop his fear of death. Recognize that it's nothing, it's as good as changing out of purple and wearing maybe pink. It's that simple. Yeah? I do not die, yeah? Because I am not the body. The entire spiritual exercise is this, that you are not the body. Got it? Yeah. So here he is saying that when I think that all this is real, all these people, situations and things and this body, when I feel all this is real, it is nothing but diplopia, yeah? An illusion that the second exists. Illusion of Dvaitam here. Dvaitam means two. Yeah? There is no two. It is all one. It is just a dream. Yeah? For example, if you are sleeping in the night and dreaming, really is that dream there? It is not. Just like that. Yeah? This body, identification with this body is a dream. Yeah? So let's read that paragraph. The ignorant man who thinks he is suffering and whose face is streaming constantly with tears is worse than a painting or a statue, for the latter is free from experience of sorrow. Yeah? See what he's comparing? Somebody who is in sorrow, who's suffering. Yeah? You are suffering because of your own desire. I want this, I did not get this, I'm craving for it, I deserve it, and I'm not getting it. I'm torturing my own self, I'm only not sleeping. This is called suffering. My own desire is the root cause of my suffering. Yes? And if I am lost in this kind of self-torture, actually, I am worse than a statue. Yeah? I am worse than stone. Nor is the statue subject to illness and death. The statue is destroyed only when someone destroys it, but the human body is certainly doomed to die. Even as when a statue is broken, no life is lost. When the body, born of thoughts and notions, is dead, nothing is lost. It is like the loss of the second moon when one is cured of diplopia. The self, which is infinite consciousness, does not die, nor does it undergo any change whatsoever. Yeah? You are that Purusha. You are that Brahman consciousness. The day this body drops off, you will realize, oh, it was only a notion that I am the body. Yes, that's all he is saying in this paragraph. Yes, but if you keep an attachment with this body and keep suffering because of that attachment with the body, then he's saying you are worse than a statue. Yeah, you're so attached to something that is subject to illness, that is subject to death. You're so attached to this body. Yeah? So drop. Recognize you are the Brahman consciousness. Clear? That paragraph is clear? Okay. Let's move on to the next page.
Vasistha, O Rama, a man riding the merry-go-round sees the world whirling in the opposite direction. Even so, a man whirling on the wheel of ignorance thinks that the world and the body are revolving. The spiritual hero, however, should reject this. This body is the product of thoughts and notions, entertained by an ignorant mind. The creation of ignorance is false. Hence, even if the body seems to be active and doing all kinds of action, it is still unreal. Even as imaginary snake in the rope is forever unreal. What is done by an inert object is not done by it. Though appearing to do, the body does nothing.
Okay. Vasistha continued, O Rama, a man riding the merry-go-round sees the world whirling in the opposite direction. Even so, a man whirling on the wheel of ignorance thinks that the world and the body are revolving. Yeah, revolving means they are not really revolving, as in they have life, they are real. Yes. The spiritual hero, however, should reject this. This body is the product of thoughts and notions entertained by an ignorant mind. And the creation of ignorance is false. So this body was created just by my ego, which said, I am separate from the Brahman consciousness, and then that ego had a desire. I want to be this. Yeah? So it is all self-created. Just like many times you create your own dreams. Have you noticed? You want something in life that is not happening. You start fantasizing, okay, what if this happens and then that happens and she says this and then I say this, and then you have your own little wonderland going on in your head. You're fantasizing. That fantasy is not real. Yeah? But you keep going round and round in circles in your own fantasy. Yeah? That is ignorance. Yeah? And that creation also of that entire story in your head is false. It's not true. Hence, even if the body seems to be active and doing all kinds of actions, it is still unreal. Even as the imaginary snake in the rope is forever unreal. So just like when you're dreaming and you're fantasizing, he said this and she said this, then I said this. Yeah? Everything is unreal. Just like that, Vasistha is saying, this body talking to you guys on Zoom, and we all thinking about Vasistha and what Vasistha is saying and reading Vasistha, all this is unreal. All this is unreal. It is imaginary. Yes, one day when we wake up, we just smile and laugh at our own dream, our own imagination. Just like you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself and you're like, what was I dreaming? How funny was that? Yeah? Just like that, he says, this is unreal. What is done by an inert object is not done by it. Though appearing to do, the body does nothing. Yeah? Just like in the dream, it appeared that you were this big hero and you jumped down that cliff. It only appeared in the dream that you did that. Yes, but you were not really doing it. Exactly like that. It is just appearing that Ekta is talking to you about Vasistha. It is just appearing to you that you are sitting over there on that chair listening to me talk. All this is just an appearance. Nothing is really happening. You can read the next paragraph.
The inert body does not entertain any desire to motivate its action, and the self, which is the infinite consciousness, has no such desire either. Hence, there is no truth, no doer of action, but only the witnessing intelligence. Once the deluded notion that this false body is the reality has arisen, then like a ghost imagined by a little boy, there arises the goblin of ego sense or the mind. This false mind or ego sense then roars aloud in such a way that even great men, frightened by it, withdraw themselves in deep meditation. He who, however, lays the ghost known as the mind or ego sense in the body dwells without fear in the void known as the world. When the ego sense is stripped of its coverings, ignored and abandoned by the awakened intelligence, it is incapable of doing you any harm. The self is infinite consciousness. Even if the ego sense dwells in this body, how is the self affected?
Read.
Whatever a man does with the body is really done by the ego sense with the help of reins known as inhalation and exhalation. The self is indirectly regarded as the cause of all this. Even as space is indirectly responsible for the growth of the plants, inasmuch as the space does not prevent the plant from extending into space. Even as a lamp is considered responsible for vision of an object, the self is regarded as responsible for the actions of the body and mind, which function in the light of the self.
Read.
You are the self, O Rama, not the mind. What have you to do with the mind? Abandon this delusion. The goblin mind residing in the body has nothing to do with the self. Yet it quietly assumes I am the self. This is the cause of birth and death. This assumption robs you of courage. Give up this ghost, O Rama, and remain firm. Neither scriptures, nor relatives, nor even the Guru or preceptors can protect the man who is utterly overpowered by ghost known as the mind. On the other hand, if one has laid this ghost, the Guru, the scriptures, and relatives can easily aid him, even as one can easily rescue an animal from a mud puddle. They easily aid him. They who laid this ghost are the good people who render some service to this world. Hence, one should uplift oneself from this ignorance by laying this ghost known as ego sense. O Rama, do not wander in this forest of worldly existence like an animal in human God. Do not wallow in this mud known as family relationship for the sake of this impermanent body. The body was born of someone. It is protected by the ego sense, and in it the happiness and sorrow are experienced by someone else. This indeed is a great mystery.
Very beautiful, huh? This is. The inert body does not entertain any desire to motivate its actions. What does it mean? Does this body desire? If you remove the mind from this body and you remove the intelligence from this body, you remove the memory and ego from this body, and you remove the Purusha from this body, what is left?
The Prakriti.
Yeah. Does that Prakriti desire?
No.
That's the meaning of the first line. The inert body. Yeah, that is the meaning of inert. The Prakriti by itself, devoid of mind, intellect, memory, ego, and the Purusha. When it is devoid of all these, it is inert. The inert body does not entertain any desire, yeah, to motivate its actions. And the self, which is the infinite consciousness, has no such desire either. Yeah, Brahman consciousness has no desire. Yeah. In the beginning of creation, there was nothing but that pool of consciousness. Was there any ego there? Was there any desire, any want? Yeah. So Brahman consciousness or the self is devoid of desire. Both clear? Body devoid of desire, self devoid of desire. Yeah. My confusion is I identify with this body. I think I am the body. Yeah. Or if I have reached higher on my spiritual journey, I recognize I am the self. Yeah. And when I recognize I am the self, what is the meaning of that level? What does not exist there?
Desire.
Perfect. And so where is the desire coming? When the desire does not belong to this body and desire does not exist at the level of the self, what is happening? Where is the confusion?
When the self is attached to the body and thinks that this body is me, that's when...
Ye jo thinks that the body is me. What is that faculty?
Delusion.
Mind. Perfect. That is the mind. Are you understanding this? Yeah? It's a self-created illusion. The self has created or got lost in this illusion of its own. Yeah? Why? Because the self forgot about the self and identified with this body. And this is very subtle. Either you get it or you don't. Yeah? Self comes out of the Brahman consciousness, yeah, because of losing its own identity. Because of thinking I am separate. Then the I is lost. No, I am separate, but what am I? That confusion state is there. That I wants to hold on to something now. It wants to grab something. It wants an identity. This I and the want itself becomes the whole confusing equation which moves the self from the self to the body or gives rise to body. You got what I'm saying? Yeah? The confusion happens because of the misidentification or the wrong identification. Because of the wrong identification, the body is born. Yeah? Body does not have desire, self does not have desire. It is this in-between faculty of confusion. The confusion is happening to the self only. Are you getting this? There is no third separate faculty called the mind. Yeah, we are going very deep now. I am watching a movie. I am there and the movie is there. Yes, two things definitely there. My interpretation of the movie, yeah, is the confusion that I have created in my mind about the movie. Somebody else watching the movie is very clear, it's only a movie. There is no need to get involved. Yeah? His understanding is separate from my understanding. Yeah? The only two real things are I and the movie, and that person and the movie. Yeah? The confusion in the middle, and the confusion here in the middle, or the understanding here, is what is called the mind. The mind is not real. It does not exist. It is just confusion. Are you seeing what I'm saying? Or is it too tough? Confused kar diya?
No, it is very... This is the first time you have spoken, so it's just a bit... So So I'm just going to summarize what you said. So Purusha loses its identity because of the ego.
Abhi, don't even bring up the ego.
Okay, so Purusha loses its identity.
Bas.
It wants that identification back. So it creates the body. Right?
Yes.
Now this lack of recognizing that it itself is the identity goes behind finding an identity is the confusion.
Correct.
And that is what we've been calling mind.
Exactly.
But it is Bula Bhatka.
Right. The day the Purusha or the self recognizes itself, what happens? This confusion goes away. So that which can go away doesn't really have an existence, any solidity. It does not exist. Very clear? Mind does not exist.
The body came because of desire, right? So then, doesn't the mind also came because of the desire?
The desire itself is the mind. Are you getting
So-
it?
Mind not existing actually is just a part of it. Nothing really exists.
Perfect. Perfect.
So mind is just one aspect we are looking at right now, but this body also doesn't exist.
Perfect. The day you recognize this truth as a Swabhava Jnana, my own self-realization, that becomes the last birth of the body. The confusion drops away. It's like you're dreaming, you're lost in your dream, you're thinking the dream is real, you're really frightened, you're experiencing that emotion, you're so lost in it. But the moment you wake up, everything drops. The dream drops, the person in the dream drops, even the sweating and that fear that you were experiencing, that also drops. Everything drops, right? That which is here drops, that which is there I was seeing, that also drops. Exactly the same thing happens. This body stops happening. Means I recognize that I do not need to hold on to an identification anymore. I have found my lost identity. So then I drop the identity to a physical body. That is the reason I don't come back into the birth and death cycle again.
That reminds me of Jain people who takes in Santhara or has a planned way of dying on their own, that time has come and I let my body go away and I'm ready to accept it. We call it Santhara.
Yes.
And they have already told people that this is how we wish to die and do not force us or do not try to let this body live any longer.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, that recognition. Yeah, but that also people do it as a ritual. Huh? The real realization is not there. I'm doing it because I've been taught by religion, my priest or my family members, my parents. Good, nice, but still if there are attachments, you will come back again in body. Yeah, so it's nice to understand these rituals, but striving to have the Swabhava Jnana is the real journey. Yeah, so that should be there, that I should really be able to understand this, that I am attached to the body and the attachments of this body, whatever, family, friends, colleagues, money, whatever. I've created a big attachment, like chewing gum going out in every direction. Yeah, so when I recognize that, oh, I am the self, something higher, I drop that identification with this body and the identification with the attachments of this body. That drops away. This, I need to strive towards this. This thirst has to develop in you from within. Then that is the real Santhara. Correct? Yeah. That is the real Santhara then. Yeah. So strive for that. Let that thirst begin. Clear? That main sutra is clear? Yeah. The inert body does not entertain any desire to motivate its actions, and the self, which is the infinite consciousness, has no such desire either. Hence, there is in truth no doer of action, but only the witnessing intelligence. Now this is very clear. Yeah, there's just the self. The self has got confused. The self is lost. It has lost its identity. And the confusion of the self is called the mind. And because of that confusion, that which it produces is called the body and the attachments of the body, the physical body. Very clear? Once the deluded notion that this false body is a reality has arisen, then like a ghost imagined by a little boy, there arises the goblin of ego sense or the mind. This false mind or ego sense then roars aloud in such a way that even great men, frightened by it, withdraw themselves in deep meditation. He who, however, lays the ghost known as the mind or ego sense in the body, dwells without fear in the void known as the world. This is very important. What is the meaning of he who lays the ghost called the mind or ego sense? You cannot really kill the mind, or you cannot really kill the ego sense. It is just this recognition, oh, I am the self. That's it. That itself is like one, swing of the sword, whatever that is called. Yeah? That's enough. Just that recognition, I am that Purusha, I am that self. It's just like sometimes in a dream you recognize, oh, I'm dreaming. Has that happened? You're still asleep. In your dream, you suddenly realize, I'm dreaming. Immediately the dream drops, but you're still sleeping. Yeah, just like that. That's all you have to recognize. Oh, I'm dreaming. This is all created by my mind. Or this creation of the self is called the mind. Yes, and I am that self. That's it. Yeah, that moment the mind gets laid. That's the word they're using. Yeah, the ego sense or the mind basically gets killed that way. This false mind or ego sense then roars aloud in such a way that even great men are frightened. Yeah, so what is the meaning of this roaring? Is that you get lost in this maya, no? And then you get attached to this raga and that dvesha, and then you're running behind this, running behind that, this running in this entire samsara continues from one lifetime to another, to another, to another. It's the ego sense is dominating. Yeah, this mind is predominating over the self. Yes, that is why the sages devised a method in which you can just meditate, go within. So this is poetic license, that they are frightened by the roar of this ego sense and then they go within into meditation. He who, however, lays the ghost known as the mind or ego sense in the body dwells without fear in the void known as the world. The moment you are able to have a victory over this false notion that you've created, then only can you become fearless. Abhaya. You remember Ashtavakra also said, Abhaya is a quality of the enlightened. Because really there is only one fear. And what is that fear? Fear of death of this body. The moment I realize I am not the body, what will drop away? The fear of death of this body will drop away and fearlessness will happen. When the ego sense is stripped of its coverings, ignored and abandoned by the awakened intelligence, it is incapable of doing you any harm. This is the most important sentence on this page. Yeah? He is actually telling you what is the technique. Yeah? And what is the technique? Basically, I'm lost in this world of Maya and Moha. Yeah? I'm doing a lot of harm to myself. I keep coming back in body and keep repeating the same thing, the same childhood, the same youth, the same running after a beautiful girl or a handsome man, getting married, children, again getting old, again dying, again coming back into body, again repeating the same cycle, again repeating the same cycle. This is harm. I'm doing harm to my own self. Yeah? How to stop doing this harm to my own self? The only way is stripping the ego sense. There is no other way. The I, the wrong identification with this body or with the mind if you have, that needs to drop away. Yeah? This is very subtle. Yeah? My problem is I think I am the body. I grow a little mature maybe and then I start thinking, okay, I'm not the body but I am the mind. And then I get stuck there. My journey gets stuck there. Very few and fortunate people can rise higher than the mind, can rise higher than the ego and recognize, no, there is something else that I am. I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am not this memory. I am not that ego also. There is some other aspect in me which is I. Right now, this body is speaking, the lips are moving, the hand is moving while explaining. The mind is thinking about what I am saying. The intellect is analyzing, but still there is something else which is watching this happen. Only because that is watching this happen, I can narrate this whole thing. That witnessing consciousness is who I am. This entire process that I described of recognizing who I am is equal to stripping of the ego sense. Got it? Because ego is nothing but a false identification of who I am. So when the ego sense is stripped of its coverings, ignored and abandoned by the awakened intelligence, it is incapable of doing you any harm. The self is infinite consciousness. Even if the ego sense dwells in this body, how is the self affected? Yeah? The self is basically not affected. It is that witnessing consciousness that is watching all this happen. Another example I can give you is, suppose you are in a fight. Somebody is saying something to you, you are lashing out to somebody. Bring the most recent fight into your mind. And do you remember you said something and he said something back, and how you were angry, and in your mind you were formulating what exactly I am going to say. Yeah? When he's saying something, I am not listening to him. In my mind, I am already preparing the next sentence that I am going to throw out. Another thing, another bomb I am going to throw at the other person and hurt him or hurt her. Have you noticed that entire thing? Now, who is noticing that I am doing all this? This entire strategy I am planning inside me. The self is noticing the ego planning all this, and the ego screaming and shouting at the other person. Are you seeing this? So the ego, the so-called I, is not I. The one who is witnessing this happening inside me. That is I. When I become very clear about this, that which is the I, this is I, this conspiring and political and mean voice inside me, this is not the I. When I recognize this is not the I abandon it. Then only can I win over this entire samsara. Why am I saying entire samsara? I will not create any more harm for me, as in no ragas, no dveshas, no coming back into body again and again because of ragas and dveshas. You see? So what is the key? Abandon the ego. Recognition. Only recognition. By recognizing, there is no other shortcut if you're looking for another. Just by being aware, like I gave you the example of the fight, and you know you're doing this. That is why you were all smiling when I gave you that example. Yeah? Laughing even. So you know you're doing this. Your mind inside is preparing that whole khichdi. So you can see what, that ego at play very easily at that moment. That's why I brought up the example of a fight. Yeah? At other times, it's very subtle. The ego is very quiet and doing it on the sly. So it's very difficult to see the ego when everything is very nice and happy and hunky-dory around you. Yeah? So you have to start watching yourself. Only by observing yourself can you catch the ego. Nobody else can do this for you. Yeah? Only Sakshi Bhav, only pure witnessing can help. Yeah? Recognize it, step number 1, just like I helped you recognize that conspiring ego at the time of a fight. And that moment, strip it off, abandon it, ignore it. He's given you, 2-3 words. Strip it off its coverings, number 1. 2, ignore it. 3, abandon. And who is doing this abandoning? Is your awakened intelligence. Basically, the self or the Purusha that I spoke about is lost. It's unawakened, it's sleeping. That's why it lost its identity. Right? This paragraph is clear? So, the self is infinite consciousness. Even if the ego sense dwells in this body, how is the self affected? Yeah? The self cannot be affected. In the next paragraph, he describes the relationship between self and ego and mind and these other notions that we create. Whatever a man does with the body is really done by the ego sense, with the help of the reins known as inhalation and exhalation. Yeah, very complicated, no? Actually not. How did you come out of the pool of consciousness? Just because of that feeling of I. The ego has still not developed. It's not a full-fledged ego. It's just that sense of separation, that I, yes, the I has come up and has got confused, is looking for an identification, cannot find one. It then has a desire, okay, I want a particular identification, and adopts the body. How does it work through the body? The body has to run through breath, inhalation and exhalation. Only till the time this body has inhalation and exhalation can this body run or work. Yeah, so this is poetic again. Whatever a man does with the body is really done by the ego, with the help of the reins known as inhalation and exhalation. Got it? The self is indirectly regarded as the cause of all this, even as space is indirectly responsible for the growth of plants, in as much as the space does not prevent the plant from extending into space. Even as a lamp is considered responsible for the vision of an object, the self is regarded as responsible for the actions of the body and mind, which function in the light of the self. For example, this light. Because this light is on, you can see me. So in a way, this light is responsible for me. Getting it? Just like that, if a plant is growing in space, the space is responsible for the growth of the plant, because it's not stopping the plant from growing. Or say a tree, redwood grows for 200 feet, suppose. Yeah, it goes to 200 feet tall. The space does not inhibit its growth. So the space is responsible for the growth of the tree. Yeah, just like that, the self is indirectly regarded as the cause of all this. Got it? Why so much poetic way of saying it? Because finally it is the self that got confused, the self that looked for an identification, gave birth to a body and led to the samsara of birth, death. So the self is responsible. Yeah, mind is also the confusion of the self. Right? So the self is the cause of all this. The rest of the paragraph is just poetic license. Clear? You are the self, O Rama, not the mind. What have you to do with the mind? Abandon this delusion. The goblin mind residing in the body has nothing to do with the self, yet it quietly assumes I am the self. This is the cause of birth and death. This assumption robs you of courage. Give up this ghost, O Rama, and remain firm. Got it? So basically the mind is just the confusion of the self. The mind is not a separate individual entity by itself. Got it? So that's why Vasistha is saying that you are not the mind, O Rama. Yeah? And what do you have to do with the mind? This mind has nothing to do with the self, but it assumes that I am the self. Got it? So we spoke about notions for the past 1 or 2 sessions, I think, 2 sessions. Yeah. First he explained to you notions, how you have notions with people, notions with events, with things. It was very easy for you to grasp that. Then he explained to you at a second stage how you have notion about this body. Yeah, you first think I am the body, but actually I am the Purusha. Yeah. Purusha does not die. So I get confused and I start thinking I am the body and I, the body, do not die. That is where the confusion started. That is when notions started happening. Because of the confusion between really who am I, the body or the Purusha. Now he's taken you one step further, deeper, helping you understand that the self gets confused that it is either this body or this confusion itself. And this confusion is the mind. There is no real entity called the mind. The body, this physical body, is more real than the mind. Yeah? If at all you want to put, क्या बोलेगा? Percentages of reality. Yeah, you would say this physical body is slightly more real than the mind. Yeah, or this physical body is slightly more real than the ego. Yeah, but the only reality is the self. Neither the body exists nor the mind. It is all confusion. Neither scriptures, nor relatives, nor even the guru or preceptors can protect the man who is utterly overpowered by the ghost known as the mind. Be very sharp in reading this. Scriptures, relatives, of course we understand, but not even the guru. Are you seeing this? If you are lost in your mind and lost in notions and creating your own Manohar Kahaniya ka world that we spoke about last time, you will create this wonderland kahanis and stories about the guru also. Then even the guru cannot pull you out of this marsh. Are you seeing this? Yeah. A guru is there to show you the path. A guru is there to hold your hand and say, come on, let's walk together. Yes, you can do it. He is the motivator. He is the coach. Yeah, he is the teacher. But you have to play that game, or you have to give that exam. Yeah, or you have to walk that path. Got it? Yes. But if you are lost in the mind, in your own wonderland, and create that own notions in between yourself and the guru, then even the guru cannot help you. Clear? That is why they are saying this mind is the goblin, no? Why goblin? Why goblin? What is a goblin?
Chalak Chokri.
Chalak Chokri, and it doesn't really exist. Yeah? It is just made up. Yeah? Imaginary. Yes? Your mind is really a goblin. It's just made up. It's imaginary. There is no real existence there. On the other hand, if one has laid this ghost, the guru, the scriptures and relatives can easily aid him. even as one can easily rescue an animal from a mud puddle. They who have laid this ghost are the good people who render some service to this world. So this is sign number 1. Yeah. Many people ask me, I've been really striving so hard on this path of spirituality. How do I know if I've progressed or not? Yeah. The only way you will know is that your mind is not creating so many notions. But if you're still not strong enough to see that, a natural, innate desire to help other people will arise in you. Has that natural desire arisen yet? Homework number 1. Not because Ekta is saying or Jayashree is saying or Guruji is saying, but do you have that natural desire to do something, some little service where I do not benefit? If I'm doing something because somebody will come and pat my back, give me an award, a medal, one label, great person, then it's not a real desire to serve or help. This is not something that can be, pushed down your throat. It has to be a natural desire. If you have this natural desire to help, to do some kind of service, then you have reached that milestone of progress. That is the way you can really know whether you have progressed on this path or not. Hence, one should uplift oneself from this ignorance by laying this ghost known as ego sense. O Rama, do not wander in this forest of worldly existence like an animal in human garb. Do not wallow in this mud known as family relationship for the sake of this impermanent body. Very important. Here he is comparing somebody who is just lost in relationships, just I and mine, to an animal. Even animals do that. What are you doing different? Unless you have that sincere desire to serve, what are you doing different from an animal? An animal doesn't serve, an animal doesn't go and help another animal. But humans who have been bestowed with intelligence which is higher than animals have this one gift where we have free will, where I can have this desire to go out and serve. If I don't have that, then there is no difference between me and an animal. Self-introspection time. Am I a human or am I an animal still? Homework number 2. The body was born of someone. It is protected by the ego sense, and in it happiness and sorrow are experienced by someone else. This indeed is a great mystery. Beautiful sentence. This body is protected by the ego sense. It is born out of I. That I which came out felt insecure. It didn't know where to latch itself to. It created a desire to be something, want to be something, created the body. So this body is protected by the I. What is the meaning of protected by the I? Till the I exists, the physical body will exist. It doesn't matter whether in this female form or an ant or an animal or a plant or a tree or another male. It doesn't matter. The physical body is protected because of the ego. Till the time I, the ego, exists, I will keep coming back into some or the other body. So the body is protected by the ego sense. Clear? And in it, happiness and sorrow are experienced by someone else. Who someone else? This self that got confused and is now called the mind is experiencing the happiness and sorrow in these bodies. Yeah? This indeed is a great mystery. Okay. Do your homework. Yeah? Especially keep introspecting. Am I still an animal or have I graduated to being a human? Yes, and I will see you next week. Jai Gurudev.